There's been a lot of discussion about the NFL going to an 18-game schedule in the future, but how would that impact the NFL?
Jets, Jets!
Welcome to Jets Talk. My name is Ryan. I'll be your pilot tonight. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Guys, we're talking 18-game schedule. What would this mean for the NFL moving forward? How would it impact everything we know about the NFL? These are my 7 effects that an 18-game schedule would have on the NFL. Let's get the most obvious one out of the way at number 7. That's more money for the NFL. Now, obviously, if you add 2 more games, you're going to get more ticket sales, you're going to get more merchandise sales, you're going to get more TV revenue sales or ad revenue or whatever, and you're going to get more food and beverage revenue. So there's a whole lot of money at stake by adding 2 more games. But one of the things that the NFL wanted to put into place was that the players would only play in 16 games, which means the contracts that are already signed were good for 16 games anyway. So I don't know if this would change the way the money would be dished out in any capacity, since the players would still be fulfilling the same type of contract. But that is one, I guess, repercussion. More money for the NFL. Number 6, more money for the players. Now you might be saying, hey Ryan, you just said that the NFL is getting more money, but they're paying the players the same for 16 games. Well, yes, but also the players would get more money. The way the salary cap works in the NFL is it's based on the amount of revenue that's actually generated by the NFL. So if the NFL makes more money, that means the salary cap goes up and more money is available to sign players. At number 5, you have more players. Now, it stands to reason if you're going to add 2 more games to the NFL calendar, you're going to have more players on the roster. As it stands right now, the NFL allows you to have 53 active players on your roster. So let's say that expands to 60 players or 65 players with the addition of 2 more games. Now, you might be saying, hey, Ryan, if there's 2 more games and there's more players on the roster, how is there more money for the players? Well, the way the NFL works right now is the top 51 players of the top 53 or of the 53-man roster get paid and are counted against the cap. So the bottom 2 guys don't count. So if you add more players to the active roster, there's a chance you don't actually have that much of an impact on the cap overall. And generally speaking, if you're having these extra players added on, they're probably not at the upper echelon getting paid a ton of money. You're probably talking about salary cap minimum type guys, vet minimums, those sorts of things. So overall, more games means more NFL players have jobs, which means more practice squad players, which means more guys making the roster. And the NFL Players Association would be totally stoked on this, because they're not just fighting for the big guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, those kind of people, but they're fighting for those fringe players, those roster cut guys that you see at the last few days of camp cuts. And if you can get more players staying in the league longer, it might be, hey, this guy's not good enough to make a 53-man roster or a practice squad, but he's good enough to make a 60-man roster. So now all of a sudden he's getting paid when he wouldn't have otherwise had a job. At number 4, we got scheduling. Now this is an interesting topic, because obviously you add 2 more games, but how would it impact the actual effect on your schedule? The way the NFL works right now is you play your division twice, so that's 6 games. Then you play 1 AFC division and 1 NFC division. That would be a total of 14 games, with the final 2 games being decided based on your finishing position within your division. So the Jets finish 4th in the division. They play the 4th place teams in the final 2 divisions in the AFC to round out their 16-game schedule. Now with an 18-game schedule, maybe you include some NFC conference teams, like the 4th place team in the divisions you're not playing there. You'd still wind up having to circulate 1 division that wouldn't be played that year. So there's other ways you can kind of go about it. I mean, maybe you have a rivalry game. Maybe it's Jets-Giants in the regular season. That would be a cool game. I think that would get pretty good ratings, at least in our city. And then, maybe you put it to a vote. Maybe there's a fan-opted game. Maybe it's something that a bunch of good players have gone to one team, and you want to see the Chiefs versus the Chargers again, or something, or Chiefs versus the Rams, something like that, where maybe the fans have a little more say in what goes on. At number 3, we have the players are only going to be playing in 16 games. Now, but what does this actually mean in practice? You're talking about, say you're a Jet fan, and you live in Arizona, and you want to see Sam Darnold play in the worst way possible, or Jamal Adams, or whoever you want to see. And the Jets are going to Arizona, they're going to play that team, and now all of a sudden your player gets a healthy scratch because he's only allowed to play in 16 games. That would be terrible. And not even just that, you don't even get another chance to see him for another 8 years because the way the NFL calendar of the schedule works. So in 4 years you would play the same division again, but it would be the other team's home game. So it would really be 8 years before you actually got to see Darnold or Jamal Adams play. And with NFL careers, they last, I think the average is like 4 years or something like that. Now, obviously the star players last longer than that, but the chances of you seeing your player, 8 years later are not really that good. At number 2, you have the season ticket holders. Now, as a former season ticket holder, they used to allow you to buy the 8 home games a year and then opt into the preseason games if you wanted. But along the way, they decided to charge you for those 2 preseason games regardless of whether you wanted them or not. So, that extra game that you would have at home, you're going to get that whacked onto your, season ticket price. So, sorry, season ticket holders, you're going to pay a little bit more. You are getting an extra game, so there is that to kind of consider. But, games aren't going to be getting any cheaper for you. And as season ticket holders, at least for the New York Jets, you've kind of, been a little frustrated over the last decade or so. You wound up having to pay for the PSL, on your tickets already. You're getting all these increases over time. The food prices are not going down. So this could be something that you're like, you know what? I don't really have the extra $400 or $450 or whatever the price is for, say, a family of 4 to go to a game. You may not be able to afford it anymore. That's, it gets expensive. And I think my biggest concern overall is the quality of play. Since the new CBA was signed, we saw a reduction in practice time. And you may be thinking, hey, you're going to get 2 more weeks of practice with an 18-game schedule, so you should see better play because of it. But take this into account. If the players are only playing in 16 games, that means you have to decide what offensive linemen you want to keep in on certain, games. Are you going to, throw in the towel on, say, 2 games of the season and allow your starters to play together for the other 16? Or are you going to let one offensive lineman sit out per week so that way you have a longer duration of stable offensive line play with only one backup being in there? Now, that doesn't seem to lend itself to good offensive line play. If you're only using your offensive lineman for, say, 8 games as a full 5-man front, you're not going to get the full protection for your $120 million, $130 million quarterback. All it's going to take is one left tackle to be sitting out nice and healthy, and the backup left tackle being in, and Sam Darnold being driven into the ground, breaking something, tearing something, and that team is now knocked out of any sort of contention, and they'd be like, well, maybe this was a bad idea. So I do not want to see this. I don't like the 16-game limit on players. I want to see them at least have the option to play in all of them. Now, there are injuries, so guys don't necessarily always, play a full 16-game schedule anyway, but I don't want to see a healthy player sit out. So what are my thoughts on this overall? I think this is a negotiation tactic, and if the NFL wants an 18-game schedule, the players are going to have to get something in return. They're not going to, the NFLPA has already come out and said, hey, we're not doing this for 16 games, limit, we want more money, or we want this, we want that. I think we're going to see, marijuana testing go away and, possibly the franchise tag. These are things that are going to have to come up in the next collective bargaining agreement if they want to get the 18-game schedule through. I think we'll eventually see that. Whether they eliminate 2 preseason games, which I don't necessarily think is a good idea. I don't think, the good players need to play in the preseason, but I do think that coaching and depth role is important for the preseason. But how would I like to see it actually done? I would love to see a second bye introduced, so that way you have 2 bye weeks, one at the beginning of the season, maybe after week 6, not week 4, and then maybe later on in the year. So that extends the season an extra week overall, and then maybe you have a mid-season break. So maybe you have a what would be the equivalent of 2 games being added on. So you have a 19-week say NFL calendar with 2 byes, and then if you have a mid-season break, kind of like the NBA or baseball does, and they have a skills competition like the dunk contest or the home run derby, and maybe you do races and you do jumps and you do throws. Like that would be kind of cool to see all these quarterbacks and running backs and everyone compete in some type of skills challenge. I think it probably lends itself to more of a fan engagement thing mid-season than it does the week before the Super Bowl when everyone's just like, yo, the Super Bowl's on and we're missing the best players that are in the game anyway. So, like, what do we care about the Pro Bowl for? I don't know. Those are things I'd like to see. Let me know what you guys would like to see down below. I'm pretty interested in what you guys think of this 18-game schedule potential, I guess. Leave a comment down below. As always, go Jets.